What's up everyone? Welcome to a new video on this channel. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. As always, I'm going to do a super short introduction of the ship appearing in the background footage before we dive into today's Have You Noticed Something chapter. The ship I'm sailing for you today is the Scharnhorst 43. Before we move any further, yes, I'm doing the manual target selection for the secondary guns here. Unfortunately, World of Warships replays for some reason don't show that, but rest assured, each target is manually selected here in order to maximize secondary gun efficiency. So, back to the ship. The Scharnhorst 43 is basically a more brawling-focused version of the regular Scharnhorst. They've made the main guns a bit worse in terms of reload and range, but in exchange for that, the secondaries get slightly faster reload and a higher fire chance. Also, the torpedo tubes reload in a mere 45 seconds, compared to the regular Scharnhorst's 68. In terms of consumables, you get a speed boost instead of a spotter plane. Which version of the Scharnhorst is better at the end of the day, in my opinion, is a pure matter of taste, and your success in battle will probably depend less on the version of the Scharnhorst you're sailing and more on other factors, such as, are you top tier or bottom tier, and what's the torpedo threat like on the enemy team, and stuff like how much HE spam is there on the enemy team. In the background footage, for example, I'm very lucky to be top tier, and there isn't much of a torpedo threat on my flank either, so I can just sort of stomp the enemy into the ground on our flank. Now, let's move on to today's Have You Noticed Something chapter. On April 25th, 2026, there was yet another attempt at President Trump's life. At the time of recording this, which is May 10th, there may have been yet another one. I actually don't know, but the one that I'm aware of is the one that happened on April 25th at the Correspondence Dinner, I think it's called. And fortunately, like all the other ones, it failed, apparently because the shooter was a bit of a half-wit. Now, what I find very interesting is the reaction from people who refer to themselves as liberals. What you'll hear out of their bubble is stuff like, "Oh my god, why didn't the shooter kill him?" Or, "The shooter has to do a better job next time." Or, "One day we'll wake up and check our phones and see the news that Donald Trump is finally dead." That's extremely disgusting in of itself, because as a society we really should have sort of transcended, shooting each other in the face just because there's someone with a set of opinions we don't like. But it becomes even more disgusting if we remind ourselves that these are the people who can't shut the fuck up about how tolerant and inclusive they are. These are the people who will happily demonize others for not being tolerant and inclusive enough, yet they will also complain that the attempt to literally kill another human being was unsuccessful just because this human being happens to have and represent a set of opinions they do not agree with. They yell that it's them and only them who are morally superior as a result of being tolerant and inclusive, yet they think violence is an appropriate means to eliminate someone who happens to have a different opinion. It's like, yeah, we're tolerant and all, but we'll also literally try to kill you if you have an opinion we don't want to hear. The people who call themselves liberals are quite possibly the most disgusting, hypocritical, and outright fascist dimwits I ever had the misfortune of sharing a planet with. And yes, you heard that right, I'm calling them out for being fascists. Because what is fascism at the end of the day? Fascism is the concept that you group around a set of ideas, which, then becomes the doctrine, and try to assimilate anybody outside your group, or if that doesn't work, oppress or eliminate them. You'll notice how the concept of fascism itself is not tied to a political side. The radical left, of course, will never get tired to tell us that fascism can only come from the political right, but that's of course complete bullshit. Fascism can obviously come from both ends of the political spectrum. So, what we are observing here, right in front of our eyes, is left wing fascism masquerading itself as tolerance and inclusion. And I think it's about time we stop referring to people propagating this kind of bullshit as quote unquote liberals, because that's really an insult to all truly liberal people out there. Instead, let's refer to them as what they truly are: fascists. And while we're at it, here's another idea. Why don't we remove all fascists from positions of relative authority and power? Not by force, mind you, because we are not any better than them if we call for violence. No, they should be removed by defeating them in the arena of ideas, and that shouldn't be too hard, given that the ideas of the radical left are mostly just diarrhea mixed with horse shit. So, let's call them out for their fascism and let's have discussions. That's the only way we can come to an agreement peacefully. And as much as I dislike anyone on the radical left, I seriously pray that we can resolve all differences peacefully. Because if we start shooting each other in the face over opinions, the result will be a society none of us really wants to live in.